I've been reading through Let's Not Meet and decided to share a few of my own stories. This happened in the fall of 1993, when I was 20 years old. In the interest of context, this was before I started college. I was working in the material prep department of a plastics factory on the night shift. I was the only woman in the department, and my male co-workers were initially skeptical that I could handle the job. I proved myself, though, and earned their respect. It was hard work, but on the plus side, it also put me in the best shape of my life. It was also about the same time that I dumped my abusive boyfriend. He was verbally, emotionally, and physically abusive, as well as an alcoholic. This fact, more than anything, is probably why I got myself into this situation to begin with. I had just gotten off work, and it was about 1:30 a.m. My car was running on fumes, so I stopped at a local gas station to fill up. And while I was pumping the gas, a woman about my age approached me, looking quite nervous and scared. She said she had been at her boyfriend's house and they'd had a pretty serious fight. She'd walked to the gas station to use the payphone and call a friend to pick her up. On her way there, though, a car pulled up as she was walking, and the guys inside started catcalling and harassing her. With a slight movement of her head, she indicated towards a car that was parked off the side of the gas station by the dumpsters. I saw a large light green car, like a Caddy or a Lincoln, with at least 2 or 3 shadowy figures inside. She said they had threatened her, and she was too scared to call her friend and wait there. The woman was neat, well-dressed, didn't seem high or drunk or anything like that. She just seemed really nervous and freaked out, so of course I didn't even hesitate. I finished pumping my gas and told her to hop in the car. I'd take her home myself. At that time, on a weeknight, there was very little traffic, so I booked it right out of the gas station and asked her where she lived. She kept twisting around in the seat to see if the car was behind us, and when I asked her to put her seatbelt on, she ignored me and kept looking for the car. I just assumed she was scared. A few blocks down the road, however, I noticed she was looking around the car. She started to ask me about money. "Where's your purse? Where's your bag? I need some money. You need to give me some." My stomach sank. I have this woman in my car, and now she's gonna rob me. Fuck. When I thought about it though, robbery just didn't make much sense. I was driving a 1985 Chevette, affectionately nicknamed the Shitbox, and was wearing my work clothes, a ratty t-shirt and jeans with combat boots. I certainly did not look like a person with a lot of cash, primarily because I wasn't a person with a lot of cash. She twisted around in the seat again and started yelling. She didn't sound scared anymore though. I checked the rear view and sure enough, the light green car was right behind me. She started cackling and bouncing up and down in the seat. "My boys are gonna fuck you up, bitch. They're gonna fuck you up." She's laughing like crazy, opening the glove box, looking in the back for a bag or purse, telling me all the messed up shit these guys are planning to do to me. Now, if I had been smart, I would have just driven to the police station. Actually, if I had been very smart, I would have called the cops from the gas station and waited with her until they arrived. That would have been the intelligent thing to do. Unfortunately, none of this crossed my mind until later. In the moment, I just got really fucking angry. I realized 3 key things at once. There was an intersection up ahead with cars on either side waiting to cross, and the light had just turned yellow. I had a spare box cutter that I kept for work in the driver's side door compartment, and the crazy bitch still hadn't put on her seatbelt. I didn't think. I floored it and passed under the yellow light just as it turned red. I turned back to see if the green car was still behind me, but the cross traffic at the intersection had started to move, and they hadn't caught up yet. The bitch started yelling. I slammed on the brakes and she slammed into the dash and windshield with a solid and viciously satisfying crack. When she rebounded to the passenger seat, I pulled the box cutter in her face and started screaming some serious batshit crazy. I can't remember exactly what I said, something along the lines of, "Get the fuck out of my car before I cut off your face and make you eat it." The crazy screaming and box cutter combo worked. She blindly grabbed at the handle and popped the door open, and I started shoving and punching her until the bitch tumbled out the door to the curb. I stomped on the gas and got to the next turn, squealed around it with the passenger door still open. I made a few more turns because I was afraid that the green car might catch up to me. After a little while, I stopped to close the passenger door. Then I cut across town and got on the highway to go home. I was on the highway for all of about 5 minutes before the shakes started. I pulled off to the shoulder to calm down and get my shit together, and then I drove home. I told my sister, who I was living with temporarily after the breakup with my ex, everything that happened. She wrapped me in a tight bear hug, while simultaneously yelling about how stupid I was for not going to the police. I've never been so glad to be yelled at in my entire life. A little over a year ago, I had a job working overnight at a gas station close to my house. I'm a woman and was 31 at the time. I know, to some it seems unsafe for a woman to work graveyard shift by herself. It was, however, a slow store, and the sheriff's office was all of about 20 feet across from it. I really didn't think I would have any problems at all. There would be about 30 customers in an 8-hour shift, and that was on a busier night. It was about 3:30 in the morning. I went outside to sweep the parking lot and do a last-minute check on the trash. It was time for a cigarette, and I had in one headphone just kinda jamming out. Across the road in the parking lot of the sheriff's office, I saw a figure with his back to me. He was swaying back and forth while looking down. Honestly, it looked like he was enjoying a much-needed piss. Against the sheriff's office, though? Yeah, the building closed at 4 p.m. and didn't open until 6 the next morning, but, seems like kind of a bad idea, right? By the back of his ripped white t-shirt, I remember he had come in about 4 hours earlier. He was a total creep, and I could already tell then that he had a good buzz going. I didn't say anything, though, just took my eyes off him and tried not to draw attention to myself. It was working until a car pulled in. I was still outside as they pulled up. I saw him look at the car, then at me, and back and forth again. As the customer was leaving, I walked her outside. I still had half a smoke burning and had left my dustpan outside with the squeegee. We both heard the man start to swear angrily and seemingly engage in an argument with himself. She looked worriedly across the road and told me to be careful. I made an awkward joke about him being the one who should be more afraid of me or something like that. The man was still there, but closer to the road now facing the parking lot of my store. Whatever he was yelling was completely unintelligible from that distance. He was obviously extremely drunk and could barely stand straight, just swaying away. I did not engage him, but I didn't take my eyes off him this time either. I just slowly walked back into the store. Something about his face really bothered me. It had a darkness to it, but his eyes looked wild. My experience during graveyard jobs had taught me that crazy-eyed people are always the worst ones. I didn't like it at all and wanted no part of whatever he was having. I still had almost 3 hours to go though, and 2 before any other employees got there. I instantly went to the computer and typed up a temporarily closed sign just in case he wanted some trouble. I was coming around the corner on my way to the doors when I saw that he'd walked across the road to my side now. I literally just barely got the second door locked when he stumbled into our very small parking lot. My hand mimed the hand signal for cut across my neck, basically saying, "Nope, sorry, you can't come in here, we're closed." I shook my head back and forth, hoping to further discourage him. He started walking away, but screamed something at me while he was doing so. I don't mean he was grumpy and shouted at me or yelled at me that I was an asshole. I mean he was enraged and was violently throwing his hands everywhere. Definitely knowing I'm in the wrong shift of the wrong job, I got really skeeved out. I decided that it was probably a good time to call the cops. It's a good thing too, because the minute I hang up with them, here he comes again up to the door. He starts pulling and banging on it, smashing at it. He backs up and runs into it trying to ram it, not that it would have done any good. I made the mistake of telling him I had called the cops and his ass was about to be grass. I say I made a mistake telling him because once I said that, he took off running right away. Police never found him. They drove around the road in surrounding neighborhoods for over an hour, but found no one. He was on foot, so I don't get where he could have gone to. He didn't get the chance to harm me, and with them not finding him, I didn't fill out a police report or anything. I was safe behind thick glass doors that were locked for the rest of my shift. It just sucked though. Maybe if I didn't warn him ahead of time, I wouldn't have had to spend the last 3 months of my job constantly looking over my shoulder. I'll never know what the right choice in that moment was. I'm just glad I don't work there anymore. Please note that I am not a native English speaker. Ironically, this is the second story where being multilingual has somehow helped me escape danger. I recently drove from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to Buffalo, New York with my cat. The ride was long, but we were making decent time for the most part. She and I had gotten up toward right before where you got into New York. It was around 5:30 p.m., but that also meant it was pitch black out too. We had only stopped once to get something at a McDonald's, and I drank their iced tea quickly to try and stay awake. I definitely had to pee now. I didn't want to leave my cat in the car, so I put her leash on and we walked into the gas station. I called out to the man behind the counter. "Hey, do you mind if we use the bathroom here?" The man behind the counter waved and said sure. She and I entered into it. She sat on the counter while I did my thing. The store wasn't empty though. There were some dudes around browsing for honey buns, tasty cake, and cheaper cigarettes than those in New York. There was a woman talking to the counter guy up front. She probably was a regular based on their familiarity with each other. Suddenly, my cat jumped about a foot into the air when we heard the doorknob rattle. I laughed and said, "Hey, sorry, it's occupied right now." My cat is a trained animal. She's trained to handle people, stimulating situations, crowds, and relatively loud noise. She hates cars though. I looked over at her after the jump and her tail was as full as it could be. She got low and slipped to her favorite position on my shoulders. She dug into my hair with her nails and did her little grumble at me that she does when she wants to be let outside. The doorknob rattled again and she reached out toward the door in a quick way like a strike. "It's still occupied," I called out, but I wasn't laughing this time. We then heard someone speak. It was a man's voice, and honestly, it kinda made my blood run cold. They were speaking in a cousin of my native language. I heard them whispering something. Should I grab her when she comes out? In my native tongue, grab doesn't really have the multiple connotations like it does in English. You know, let me grab them before they go, I have to ask them something, grab a bite to eat, grabbed by the hair, that sort of thing. They used what was similar to take, as far as I could tell through the door. No, the cashier is right there. We can go stand outside. I think her car is the blue one. My cat did her angry grumble bug sound, and I tried to pet and reassure her. There weren't any windows in this bathroom, and my car was parked unwisely around the side of the lot. I had parked it a little away from the lights because I had a lot of stuff in it and didn't want the items to be lit up. It was not the blue one. We heard their steps retreat, and we sat there for what felt like a long time. We both jumped back when we heard a knock on the door. "Hey, come out quickly. My girlfriend and I will lead you back to your car. They're standing out by the pumps." It was the counter guy and the woman I thought was the regular. I opened the door and she ushered me to the back. Not smart, but I didn't know what else to do. She opened the door and I could see my car about 20 feet away. I wanted to sprint, but I remembered I used my key thing to set the alarm. I unlocked the car with my keys and the alarm went off. I threw myself into the driver's seat, unlocked it with the key thing, and quickly pressed the button to lock it again. I felt my heart in my throat as I threw the car into reverse and got the fuck out of there. On my way out, I noticed those guys standing near the blue car on the other side of the lot, trying to nonchalantly smoke. They didn't even know I got out. At about 8 p.m. last night, yep, what a spooky time, I was walking with a friend of mine, Sally, about a mile to the closest cafe. We're both girls in our early 20s. Neither of us own cars. Sally didn't have her Opal card, which is this Aussie version of an Oyster card, basically an automatic ticketing system for public transport. This meant that walking was our only option. It's summer over here, so it was fairly well lit. We were walking down main roads, so we weren't too concerned. We finally arrive at this cafe and sit down. I was paying, but I only had my credit card, and sure enough, it was cash only. Sally was on the phone when I got back from the counter, so I gestured for her to stay put and guard the spot while I went to get some cash out. This is my home suburb, so I know there's no ATMs around here. My best bet was a gas station about a block away. I'm doing a light jog so I don't keep Sally waiting, when this balding, sweaty guy, probably in his late 40s with a tank top and no shoes, comes pacing behind me as I pass the corner of the block. He walked right behind me for about 100 meters. I didn't really think too much of it though. The gas station was the next building along. It seemed like he had just come out of a nice suburban house along the street, and it wasn't the witching hour, so I assumed he was just going to the station like me. He didn't even cross my mind as I entered the tiny convenience store, nor did he attempt to follow me in. In my peripheral, I saw him walk right past the door and out of sight. I looked around for an ATM that they sometimes have inside. No such luck though, so I go up to this man in his 30s at the desk and reluctantly ask if they're able to do cash out. He smiles politely at me and says, "Of course." He then asks me casually, "Hey, is that guy with you?" I have no idea who he's talking about at first. He points to the man from earlier, pacing right outside the store. Keep in mind he didn't look at all menacing. He wasn't going back and forth just outside the door. He was drifting in the space outside, from the pavement to the gas pumps to the storefront, seemingly aimlessly. I assumed he was on drugs. I told the clerk no, not thinking much of it at all. He looks at me. "Oh, he was staring at you before. I thought he might have been your dad or something." I laugh it off. Honestly, I wasn't concerned at all. He was still ambling around outside, and I couldn't imagine him having a fixed gaze on much of anything. I thanked the clerk for the cash. Before I went to turn away, though, to leave, he says, "Hey, why don't you just wait here and see if he leaves first?" We wait together for a few minutes in silence. The guy begins to pace back and forth directly against the front wall of the store, looking straight ahead and never into it. It still looked like the man was just on a drug-induced amble and seemed harmless. Not once did I catch his gaze, so I figured it would be safe to just slip out the door and walk back to the cafe in the fairly bright light of dusk. Especially since Sally was texting me at this point asking where I was. I thanked the guy at the desk once again for his concern, and assured him that I didn't know the guy and was not involved in some weird scheme to rob the store. I headed for the door. The clerk asked me if I wanted him to walk out with me. I said that I should be alright, and began walking away from the block. Well, as I left the store, the drifting man stops pacing and makes a beeline for me from the other end of the building. I seriously didn't think much of the guy at all, up until this point, but for the first time he was briskly walking in a straight line towards me. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I started power walking so that he didn't think I was actively trying to escape him. I was still trying to convince myself I was just being paranoid and should be more casual. I didn't look behind me to see how close he was. I had reached the pavement on the other side of the gas pumps when I heard the clerk run outside. He yelled at me, "Go! Run!" I made a break for it, looking over my shoulder. He had grabbed the man by his shoulders from behind and was restraining him. The man wasn't even glancing back at him or trying to escape. He was just glaring daggers at me, watching me run away. That's pretty much the end of the story, folks. I kept running until I crossed the road, then turned around standing still. The clerk was still holding on to the man and restraining him while he stared. The clerk and I just looked at each other in bewilderment, not really knowing what to do. He made a hand gesture to go. I gestured my thanks. Clasp your hands together and shake them a bunch of times. I got back to Sally with the cash and bought food, before walking back home a different way. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. If you enjoyed the content that you heard in this video, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you do decide to subscribe, make sure to hit that bell button right beside the subscribe button and turn notifications to all. Although if you would prefer not to do that, I also upload videos every day, so you can just come and check every now and again and you won't miss anything. I did try to do some different editing stuff this episode to make my audio quality a little better. Let me know what you guys think, if you notice any difference or not. I think it sounds pretty good, but I will have to leave that up to you guys. If you guys would like to send in your own stories to be read on the channel, you can go ahead and take a look in the description below the video. You will find links to all of my social media, including my Gmail, Facebook, and Twitter accounts. Go ahead and send me a message on any of those, and I will try to get back to you on your story as soon as possible. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the tagline what the name of the story is if it has one, what type of story it is if it has one, and how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. If you decide to send in a story, please make sure to include proper grammar and spacing if you can, as well as much information as you feel comfortable sharing. That will give it the highest possibility of appearing in a video in the future. If you guys have any criticisms on anything I can do better, please be sure to leave those in the comments as well, as I am always looking for new ways to improve the channel. If you guys like my stuff here, as always, I have 2 other channels that I run, called Mr. Blue Skies and Darkest Hour respectively. I do true crime videos and documentaries on dark things that have happened in history on the other one. So if you like my stuff here, check those out if you feel like it. Maybe those will be for you. Overall though, guys, I think that's pretty much it for now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.